Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Caring Conversations. We are back at it. Hello, Jordan. How are you doing?
Hey, Rachel, it's been a great week. I'm coming down from last week's episode.
That was amazing. And for our audience who have not caught the episode yet, Jordan, thank you for introducing me to these lovely ladies. So we had a panel of Care Heroes on, and there is actually a clip of that. I know you guys shared it out on Care. We have it on Senior Living Foresight's LinkedIn page, and you guys can hear directly from these frontline workers about some of the challenges they faced and really how they're getting through that and how to build a culture of respect. Jordan, I know that was something that we really dove into, and that is so important.
Yeah, building, just hearing those stories, it's all qualitative, which is why I'm so excited for today's episode, which is based in quantitative, which is really just digging into how do we take those conversations and then put them into practice. So
Absolutely. I heard this great saying, and it's data without context is meaningless. And I think that's why our guest today is really going to offer some insight, dare I say, into how to create a great work culture and a great place to work. Jordan, do you want to introduce our guest before we bring her on, please?
Yeah, so our guest is Dr. Jacqueline Kung, who is the CEO of Activated Insights, and she should be coming on the screen soon. There she is.
There she is. Hello.
So, Dr. Kung, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about what Activated Insights does and how they are related to a great place to work.
Sure. Activated Insights is the senior care part of Great Place to Work. So it's a partnership. So we had discovered 5 years ago that a lot of senior care providers were going to Great Place to Work to try to certify and couldn't because, in our industry, 85-90% of employees don't have work emails. And so we partnered together to bring this initiative of Great Place to Work to our industry.
Awesome. Wow.
I love that.
That's a whole specialized part of a Great Place to Work. That's awesome.
Yeah, and a big part of it is, the Great Place to Work mission is to improve the world through workplaces because, we spend half our time working, right? Half our waking hours working. And they saw that senior care has a double mission, which is enables them to fulfill their mission plus the overall purpose and mission of senior care. So that we were really excited to partner together. So Great Place to Work has been, if you contact Great Place to Work, they send them, if you're a senior care provider, they send you our way.
Wow. That's awesome. I'm sure that definitely drives resident satisfaction because your place to work is someone else's home.
100%.
What is it like?
100%. And it's actually not as intuitive as you think. In this industry, a lot of people say Great Place to Work is a great place to live. And that's true. But the causal relationship is actually counterintuitive. It's that a great place to work results in less employee turnover, and places with less employee turnover has more consistency in the experience or relationships that residents have, therefore higher happiness in the residents.
That's really fascinating to me because obviously, it's a crisis in this industry, turnover and not having employee retention. And I guess I'm curious from the research you've done or what you're starting to see as a lot of the reasons why retention is so poor in this industry. That's really a struggle that we're facing right now.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because a lot of our assumptions is that it's that we don't have, caregivers aren't having the right approach, or it's something wrong with the approach or the process or but just not having enough time or not having the consistency is really the thing that drives whether or not your resident relationship building with that caregiver is going to be successful. It's just, do you have enough time, and are you consistent? Are you always there? If you're churning over and you see a different person every month, it's a lot.
Yeah. And in fact, we brought some, since this episode is about data, we brought some data, but really kind of to Jordan, your point about, or Rachel, your point about insights, how do we use it? So if you want, happy to share some of that. It's a few minutes long. I think a lot of actionable takeaways.
Yes, I think that's one of the biggest things we want to do in this episode is have our audience have some takeaways about how to utilize this data in an efficient way and take action. So yeah, let's dive in, please.
Okay, sounds good. We're going to keep it really casual. So if you have questions, please chat them in the box. And also, I'm not going to go into formal presentation mode on this. Okay? So that's why you can see some of my PowerPoint presentation here.
I love it.
Keep it real casual. So what we pulled together were some workforce trends and 3 ways to win, AKA this is what you can do. So in terms of we did a quick introduction. Activated Insights, as you know, runs Great Place to Work for senior care, specifically within senior living. We also do resident and family surveys. We partner with US News on that side. So we love bringing visibility and recognition to our industry because, I'm a former operator. Kudos to all the operators. We should be singing the praises from treetops, and that's what we try to do as a company. We love working with Great Place to Work because we work with, Cleveland Clinic, Hilton, Marriott, Whole Foods, Kaiser, like all sorts of companies, and bring the best practices from those industries and the data into ours. Okay, so we'll talk about some of that data from other industries. It's really interesting when you lay it with ours. But to start, I think we were starting to go here. It's that we have a problem. Before COVID, employee turnover in senior living was about 65%. And this includes all employees, full-time and part-time, including part-time servers. Now, after COVID, it's spiked up, in order about 20% or so. So it's a really big problem that many of us are struggling with. And of course, we talked about why it's a problem. It affects resident experiences, right? And for anyone with quality metrics, that you can see that it affects the quality of care as well. What's in it for you if we were to fix this problem is when we overlay the Great Place to Work scores and resident scores and each building, each community's net operating income, it comes out to be, if you look at the top tier, top quartile versus the bottom quartile, it's a difference of $275,000 per building. So it's quite a lot of money.
That's huge.
Yeah, to being able to fix this problem and rise up and make improvements results in bottom line. So it's, mission, which is the right thing to do and a good thing to do, as well as margin. And the margin is $275,000 per community. And this is data from the last 12 months for senior living communities. In terms of if we break this problem down of employee turnover into 3 parts, it's about recruiting, it's about retaining, and it's about growing our talent, right? So in terms of recruiting, when you overlay, as I mentioned, we work with all sorts of other industries. Let's take some of the hourly employee industries, right? Hotels, hospitality, hospitals, retail versus senior living. When you look at the number of job applicants that each company is getting, senior living on average, and this is the range that we see within senior living versus hotels, hospitals, and retails, applicants per job opening, as reported by the companies, we see that senior living lags. So our industry gets fewer job applicants compared to other industries where we are competing for talent, right? Like heroes that Jordan will be talking about, like housekeepers, like restaurant cooks, right? So that's the bad news. The good news is on the very right there. When you are a great place to work, and in particular, Fortune ranks the best in aging services, those best, the average is higher than the average of other industries. So that is the good news. The takeaway here is you want to know what your score is and how to improve it so that you can become one of the best. So our recommendation is you want to stand out. Go through Great Place to Work certification because it's very low cost. It's an accessible process. Within 1 to 2 months, you will either become certified or you will know your baseline. right? So that helps a lot in terms of recruiting. The second part of the employee turnover challenge is retaining. And when you look at our industry versus the Fortune 100 best companies to work for, the bad news and then the good news, the bad news is that on average, our score is about 10 points lower on a 100-point scale compared to the Fortune 100 best companies. However, the good news, and Rachel and I were talking about this a little bit before this episode, the good news is the purpose. My job has special meaning. It's not just a job. That sense of purpose and mission in our industry is 89 versus an 85 in the Fortune 100 of other industries. So purpose, we fly with high flying colors in our industry. And so we should be emphasizing that more. And so the thing is, what we recommend here is not only emphasize purpose more, but there's an 80-20 focus. We work with a lot of providers, and providers are just all over the map. I mean, I used to be a former operator, right? Like there's a list of 300 initiatives. It's not possible to focus on all of them. We need to 80-20 it. And if employee engagement is the thing that will move the needle, it really deserves focus. And even within all the engagement initiatives, need to prioritize and focus as well. Highlighting purpose is one example. So the third thing and last element of deconstructing the employee turnover problem is how do we grow our talent, right? So when you look at the data of our industry versus hotels, hospitals, and retail, AKA our competitors, when it comes to the frontline workers that we are trying to attract, or I should say workers that we are trying to attract, hotels on average promote 30% of their roles from within, hospitals almost half, retail, and these are examples under each of these examples of the companies where we pulled the data. In retail, it's 31%. Our industry, 17% of our roles are promoted from within. So that's the bad news. The good news is that the best senior living providers fill 40% or more of their roles from within. Brightview is number one on the Fortune 100 best companies to work for. Fortune 50 best in aging services in our industry. Brightview is number one on that list, and they proudly will tell you they have promoted 42% of their directors from within. And that makes a really big difference. So our recommendation here is set a CEO level goal of promoting 40%, or, of the open roles that you have, filling 40%. If that's too high, just put 30%, okay? But to have a goal, measure it, and put all the systems in place to do that, it makes a really big difference. And I have lots of stories to share here if you want. So that's our recommendation in terms of growing our talent from within. So in terms of the summary, we have a problem, employee turnover. I think many of us, if not all of us, struggle with that. And if we deconstruct it, it's in recruiting, retaining, and growing. We have a lot of problems from the data point of view, but the insight is what can we do about it? So number one, become Great Place to Work certified and go and compete to be the best in our industry. It's a very fair process and it only makes you better. Number two, focus on the 80-20. We're all chickens with our heads cut off. Let's put our heads back on and focus more and prioritize the things we want to be prioritizing. And then number three, we highly recommend setting a goal for the number of internal hires that we want to grow the talent from within. We suggest 40%. If that's too high, we've worked with providers at the goal of 30%, and that seems to work too. All right, so that's what we wanted to share from a data perspective. If anyone wants to be in contact, I think I'm easily found on the internet, but this is my email if anyone wants that. Darcy, I think, had a question.
Yes, where is that list of 50, Dr. Kung, please?
Yeah, great question. So what, Darcy, you can do is go to Google and put in Fortune best workplaces in aging services, and you will come up with a list. The last list was from last year, the 2021 list. The 2022 list will be released September 7th. And then Darcy saying it would be great
Great point.
recruiting students to our senior living management degree here at WSU. Absolutely, 100% agree.
I'll also plug my alumni, my alma mater, since, the Erickson School of Aging at UMBC does have a great senior aging services program.
That's fantastic.
But WSU has a great program too. If you're getting into the field, get into the field no matter where you come from. But if you could share your slide again, I want to go back to those three things, because digging deep on those three things will help me guide where I'm asking questions from. So recruiting, obviously, you can become a great place to work, or you you can bring in care, because we will, that's what we do. As far as retaining and growing, what are the biggest things or solutions that are brought about, and ideas, outside of the box ideas, common things that people can do, like to retain their employees, or big engagement things? Because one of the things that we talked about in our first episode was a lot of the things that we think are engagement aren't engagement.
Yeah.
Like pizza parties.
Mm-hmm.
They think that there's a part of their culture, but it's not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's such a great question. And just to your note on pizza parties, pizza parties sometimes by employees are viewed as unfair, because usually who partakes in pizza parties? It's usually the daytime shift, right? Does the knock shift ever get pizza parties? Yes, sometimes, but I would say probably 1 out of 5 times. Are you going to remember the 11 to 7 shift, right? And or even the 3 or 4 to 11 shift. And so pizza parties are often during the day, and so it can be perceived as unfair. And we have heard that about donut parties, pizza parties, all sorts of things, and they are not engagement for sure. We are finding that ample data for that in the feedback that we collect. In terms of some of the, let me get to the out of the box thinking, but let's address some of the basics first, which is what's really critical is to have a system in place where you communicate with 100% of your employees. It is shocking how many senior living provider CEOs cannot send a message out at 9 a.m. in the morning, and by 4 or 5 p.m. it have reached 100% of their employees. Many providers are in that boat. So let's just address the basics, right? Which is communication. Have systems in place where you can communicate with 100% of your employees. And COVID helped a lot, but we are still finding that some providers and employees are just either inundated, or they're not, they don't have access to email, or they don't have access to your scheduling calendars, messaging. Text messaging is pretty good. But their text threads are really big, and you forget to add someone or take someone off, right? So that's a basic. I would say in terms of out of the box, I would say, let me give an example from another industry. So Hilton really worked on this. I mean, if you guys remember 15 years ago, Hilton was like, who wants to stay in a Hilton? There were like all sorts of cracks. Like, it was a really crappy hotel chain, right? So they took a big effort to become a great place to work, and it was one of their goals to become one of Fortune 100 best companies to work for. They eventually made it. It took about 10 years, but they did. So what they did, one example of employee engagement, is that they noticed and almost half of Hilton's staff is one role. Can you guess which one it is? Housekeepers. Housekeepers. Yeah, and so what they did was they created a program called Heart of the House, and they had housekeeper Olympics, so that housekeepers can show off their skills, right? Just like an athlete, and they could win, compete. I mean, it was fun. They took a whole week for this, and it's Hilton worldwide. So worldwide, housekeepers are competing for the heart of Hilton, and it's the housekeeping Olympics. So that's one example of employee engagement where you can really showcase your skills, you compete, and guess what? You have fun, right, as well.
It seems like if you boil all of those ideas down, it's just having a seat at the table and feeling like you have a seat at the table. And it just doesn't make sense to me that we don't have a culture of having a seat at the table when the table is our resident. Like, we strive to have a person-centered culture for our residents, cluing you in and things we'll talk about in the future. But if we are person-centered, then the people like right touching the person should be the person that we're having as a seat at the table. And that's what we learned last week, is that that's what our heroes, and I'm calling all of our care force heroes, but that's what our care force wants, including clinical, non-clinical, I mean, housekeepers and servers, is to be included in the conversation and
to be heard. I mean, that's the biggest thing I think anybody wants at work, and that creates a great culture, is where everyone can be heard, and that company can grow together and people feel seen. So I think that Olympics that you bring up, Dr. Kung, that's amazing. Like, I just imagine like how seen they felt. And also going back to recruiting, I think that's really cool. So Steve Moran, our founder, always talks about using TikTok as a recruiting tool. And, we can all chuckle a little bit about that, but actually, as the creative social media one here, that is actually an amazing tool for recruiting. And I go to your example, Dr. Kung, where if someone's just recording this on the phone and throwing up these little clips of the Olympics and just showing like, okay, this is cool, this is fun to show up to work. Like, I'm not looked down upon, I'm respected, I'm heard, and what I have and offer is a truly valuable skill. And I'm someone that, that is my profession, and I'm looking for a place to work. Well, I mean, that's done. Check. You've checked the box. Like, I can do what I love and have fun.
Yeah. I'd like to add on to that, because most people don't know, almost half of our workforce, I think it might even be half this year, are individuals born after 1982. But the people who are in the corporate C-suite are usually born before that. And so the social media presence of companies generally is on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter of providers, right? If you were to choose three. Whereas individuals born after 1982, it's Instagram, TikTok, and Snap. And it's really interesting, because, I mean, maybe I can ask the two of you, you guys are very young, looking, I should say.
I'll take it. Thank you.
The population born after 1982 think about Facebook. What do you guys think? It's for old people.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I got off like after college because my aunt was on there, and I just couldn't do it anymore.
I love Facebook, and that's ageist.
I mean, I do. I love Facebook.
I like Facebook.
Oh yeah, Steve, you're watching. I didn't know that. Okay, Steve, you and I are old. Steve Moran, you're old. Steve, I just want the record say you and I are bona fide old. So, anyways, the recommendation here, just to add on to Rachel, what you were saying, is we highly recommend providers get talent marketing, recruiting. Basically, kind of having a recruiting brand on Instagram and TikTok. Snap is used for another purpose. You'll learn if you talk to any teenager, it's for another purpose. But we highly recommend Instagram and TikTok and having your employer brand there.
That's fantastic.
I don't want to take because we're now focused on retaining, but then grow. So you have the recruiting, and then they think it's really cool, and like I'm having a lot of fun, but. And I mean, I look at things holistically. I see all of this as being, because once you have a seat at the table, then there are things that are going to come up that you need to know. And you don't know what you don't know. So how are you giving them opportunities to learn and grow? Because the company is growing, we're getting more residents in, but there are more complex. I had this as a recovering recruiter. I had these problems because we would have more residents coming in, especially in a SNF. You have more complex situations coming in, but you're not giving those opportunities to learn. So these complex problems come in, or the resident issues and residents that facing different issues come in, and then you're like scrambling and looking at your DON and say, what do we do? I've never dealt with this before. So how do you give them opportunities to grow? What's an out-of-the-box solution for growth?
Also, we see you, Darcy, real quick. We're not going to bash on Facebook the whole time.
No,
Yeah.
we love Facebook.
That's a great question. For that, I would point people to look at Trilogy Health Services. Because, you know, some CNAs just want to be CNAs and they want to be the greatest CNA ever, right? And that is, you know, and you don't have to grow to be an LVN or a DON. And like, I don't know anybody who wants like a DON who wants to be an administrator. Well, not anybody, but like some, but very few, right? So like you may want to grow in your own role. And so what Trilogy does is they do an apprenticeship and an apprenticeship program where you can become an even better CNA. You can get dementia certified and you get a pay bump. You can become like a preceptor or a mentor. You get a pay bump. So you go through these certification programs, and Trilogy, for example, has 5 on the CNA track. They also have the chef track and different things where you grow within that profession of, for instance, being a CNA. And I want to also address a couple things that Darcy has brought up. Which is we absolutely should keep recruiting on Facebook. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying half of our population is now not on Facebook, so we should be on the platforms that they're on. But we should absolutely still recruit on Facebook. LinkedIn is still great. Twitter is still great, but also add Instagram. I mean, I know it's a lot of social media, but Rachel can probably help you.
I'm on it. Ask me questions. Find me on LinkedIn.
The other thing that I want to highlight that Darcy brought up is at the very beginning of this conversation, she said, you know, being able to highlight the fortune list to her students at the university. And that's exactly why we wanted to partner with Great Place to Work, because they were able to help us get a list with Fortune. Like, who has ever heard of Aging Services having its own list, right? In some like major national publication. And we've always been the stepchild of healthcare or hospitality. And so we were really pleased to bring Aging Services into the forefront. And as soon as that first list published in Fortune Best Workplaces in Aging Services, guess what? Great Place to Work Institute got a call from Four Seasons because their head of people was like, I need to learn more about this list because I've been losing people to this sector and I didn't know it was a thing. So now Fortune having a list really legitimized, I need to learn more. So it really legitimizes and then should be. And I'm so excited because we're promoting senior living, senior care as a career path, right? So that's why I'm really excited. And Elizabeth is asking Trilogy. Yeah, if you look at Trilogy Health Services and then Google Trilogy Health Services Apprenticeship Program, they've gotten some state funding for it. They worked with Argentum, the Senior Living Trade Association, to get more funding and rolling that out. And let's see, Steve, I think, has a point as well. A realistic picture. So what happens if we make it look super fun and cool and then it is not? Oh yeah, that is on my pay grade. I don't know what to do.
Should we be making, so I mean, boiling it down, it's giving a sense of purpose, bringing them to the table and just meeting them where they are, and not only meeting them where they are, but taking a step forward and taking our C-suite to where they are and having C-suite doing meal passes so that they can understand what that actually is like what's mealtime like when you only have 2 CNAs and you have to make sure that everyone is fed. Like, meeting people not only where they are, but like actually putting yourself in those shoes. And in being person-centered, I just mentioned that earlier. Going on Facebook we have an RN workforce that is in their 40s, and the majority of them are in their 40s. The majority of them are look like a certain type of person, and we should be marketing to our personas, to our healthcare workers. A lot of CNAs tend to be, build that persona, look for that person, and then meet them where they are. You don't have to put in, we understand your executive office has like ping pong and beer in the fridge, but don't put that in your advertising. Show the residents, show the engagement, show those partnerships that we talked about last week. Like, those are what they want to see, is that I'm going to have a seat at the table and I'm going to learn more and I'm going to grow and I'm going to be able to take care of the residents that I serve.
Jordan, you bring up such an interesting point, and And I guess getting back to kind of my points, like, I don't know if I want to necessarily say making it look cool, right? Quote unquote, because it's a tough job. You know, I've said it again and again. My mom was a frontline worker in a nursing home for 2 decades. And no, like, it's hard work. I guess getting back to sort of that recruiting aspect and showing things on, looking at it from the social media side, I don't know if it's about making it look cool, but as more so than your team being seen and acknowledged. And I think that's what we're all sort of working toward or agreeing on, that creates a good culture. And the last thing I want to say is, you know, I say it again and again, this industry needs to build a future and a foundation for the future. And that is, though, at some point, millennials and Gen Zs, you know, and where is that going to come from if we're not getting on those other platforms? And there's also a very professional and heartfelt way to do that. I think there's a balance, and that has to be understood. But just kind of in closing, Jordan, I absolutely agree. It's more about being seen than making it look cool. You know, this isn't a tech startup. It's hard work. So
I have had, in closing, I have had the pleasure of working for a senior living community that had the certification of a great place to work. And when I went to that community, there were opportunities to actually move and grow beyond. And it's because they took the chance to use this service and this as a chance to listen and ask the questions and ask the tough questions and have those conversations. And if it takes you getting activated insights and getting a great workplace to work certification to listen to your people closest to your resident, do it. It shouldn't, but it does. And for some people, go and do that thing, because as an industry, we all need more great places to work to elevate ourselves, because I want to be at the top of that list someday. Like, where hospitals are like, God, I wish we were like senior living.
Absolutely. And as we're coming up on time here, oh my gosh, guys, we were getting into it. I feel like we could talk another 20 minutes. Dr. Kung, you have offered such fantastic insight. Thank you for joining us. And again, I want to leave you with the last word here for our audience, to sort of what you want them to take away from this conversation we just had, and where, again, they can get some more resources from you, please.
Yeah. So 3 things. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me to share today. What a great conversation. Thank you. The second thing is, if you do want more information, you could go to activatedinsights.com. If you go to greatplacetowork.com, you know, again, they just send you our way. So you might as well just go to activatedinsights.com. You can just sign up to certify right there. And then the third thing is, the last thing I'll leave folks with is, when you're looking for folks, number one, we want to make sure to pay at the rate that hospitals, you know, the mall, restaurants are paying for that role, not just each other. I know a lot of people compare with each other, but it's the rate that's in the marketplace. Number two, we want to be hiring folks who live as close to the workplace as possible. In the data that shows that really increases employee retention. And having 2 or more bus stops between where they live and where your community is really jacks up employee turnover. So be mindful of those things, and then everything we talked about in terms of culture and employee engagement.
Fantastic. I think there's so much to take away here. And what I really loved about this conversation, both of you guys, is that we really are getting to tangible takeaways to get to a real root of a problem here in our industry. So again, Dr. Kung, I want to say thank you for joining us and offering all this data and actually giving it context and meaning. Jordan, thank you for being here. I will see you next week. We will be here every Wednesday. Join us.
Wednesday.
Yeah, streaming LinkedIn, YouTube.